Welcome back to the latest edition of the Whiteout Report podcast here with our friends at ProLine TV, coming to you every Wednesday to preview Penn State's upcoming matchup, previewing this Saturday's trip to the Rose Bowl, not for the Rose Bowl, but to the Rose Bowl to play the absolutely hapless UCLA team, very possibly the worst Power 4 team in the country this year. So hopefully a good get-right game for Penn State after a just gut-wrenching loss against Oregon in double overtime in the whiteout this past Saturday. If you did not catch it, make sure you go back on YouTube, watch Dylan and I's recap from that one. That was a solid hour of recapping that game and everything that went wrong for Penn State offensively, as well as some of the positives. Unfortunately, we're going to start tonight, though, without a positive, with a pretty major negative. Dylan, you and I kind of had this brought to our attention last night from a friend of ours that's got some ties, got some connections within the program, that he had heard that Tony Rojas had tore his ACL at practice yesterday. That smoke just continued all day. And then after practice this evening, James Franklin didn't confirm what the injury is, but did confirm it's a long-term injury for Tony Rojas. Obviously a major blow to a very good Penn State defense. Rojas was a guy that they were really counting on taking a step this year, and through 4 games, he had taken that step. He looked healthy, which he didn't for times last year. And he had been awesome, through 4 games, 25 tackles, 2 sacks, a pass breakup, 5 tackles for a loss. He had been all over the field. The tackling had been much cleaner now that he got his shoulder cleaned up in the offseason. It really felt like Tony Rojas was well on his way to having an all-conference type of season, having the type of season where he's probably going to play himself into being, a top 100 or so draft pick in April. And now, unfortunately for him, again, James Franklin has not said it's season ending. He called it long-term, but combine that with, some of the things we heard, some of the other things that were, leaking on message boards and whatnot throughout the day. It's safe to say that Tony Rojas will not play for Penn State again this season.
Yeah, it definitely, even in best case scenario, it seems like one of those situations where, if they make a playoff run, if they make a deep playoff run, maybe, but it's very much looking like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of, kind of like KJ Winston last year, where there was always, the idea in the back of everybody's mind. Well, if they did this, if they got this far, maybe KJ Winston can make it back in the end. Ultimately, he didn't. Considering everything, it's probably fair to think that Tony Rojas has played maybe his last snap as a Nittany Lion. But, just with my background here being the brick wall, I got to say, it must be it's a metaphor for how Penn State fans probably feel this week, right? The Oregon loss, it was already bad enough. And that loss for Penn State fans just felt like you run into a brick wall over and over again every single year for the last 10 years. And then today you got this news about Tony Rojas, which is just, okay, you were able to get past that brick wall. You weren't able to get over it. You just kind of went around it because that's all you could do right now. And then you run right into another brick wall, which is the Tony Rojas injury. And yeah, this is, I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, this is a player who, was he did he play perfect linebacker? No. Did he make mistakes? Sometimes our head scratching? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, as me and our friend Clay were talking about during the Oregon game, this is a player that at the end of the season, you could very easily just ride into an all-American team lineup because he was likely going to be that just off name recognition alone. And he was going to for sure have a big player or two over the course of the season that would have helped his cause along the way. He's just one of those players. And now Penn State is going to have to find a way on defense to survive without him. And there's just I think they'll be able to survive for the most part, but there's no replacing that athleticism and physicality that he brings in the middle of that Penn State defense. I mean, he's one of their most athletic defenders, if not their most athletic defender. And there's nobody in that linebacker room that comes close to being the athlete right now that he is. Maybe, somebody like LeVar Arrington Jr., but or the second. But I mean, LeVar Arrington is not ready to step in right now and contribute at that level. James Franklin said today they are going to have to likely burn not just one but maybe two red shirts this fall because of this injury. So I mean, it is a significant injury for Penn State, and one that really changes how you look at this Penn State defense against not superior opponents, but against quality opponents like Ohio State, like Indiana, because that is a player that can change the game defensively for you. And I mean, just this past week against Oregon, him and Amari Campbell combined for 25 tackles. Mm-hmm. That is just major production loss. And this is there's a defensive coordinator that can help make up for the loss. It's Jim Knowles, but I mean, that's a big part of your scheme and your defense now gone. And like James Franklin said, it's I'm sure they'll find a way to get past it, but it's the initial shock of the injury and just the idea that you're not going to have this player around on your defense going forward. That's what is, I think right now, probably hardest for Penn State fans to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the defense. You talked about where Rojas fits in on. You mentioned the athletic ability. I mean, the guy was on Feldman's freak list coming into the season for a reason, right? Yeah. And you look at that defense, I would argue he's at worst. When you looked at the defense at worst, probably, your fifth most important player behind Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Ricky Wheatley, and Harris. And, you could argue he's higher than that. He's easily one of the five most important guys on this defense. And now you're going to be without him. So
I do want to know quickly, I mentioned two red shirts potentially being burned. Those players are Alex Tash and Cam Smith, both obviously true freshmen. Two guys that Penn State was very high on, two four-star prospects. But, I mean, in a make-or-break season, and now in what your room for error for Penn State is near zero at this point. The only game you could even consider losing and having a chance to make the playoffs is to Ohio State. But with almost no room for error, they're not going to have to not rely on two freshman linebackers, but Tash and Smith are going to have to play going forward. And there's going to be considerable pressure on both of those guys to perform at a high level immediately, even if it's only for a handful of snaps, because of the importance of this season for Penn State and the schedule going forward for Penn State with coming off this week's loss to Oregon, last week's loss.
Yeah, and I think one thing, too, that's going to be kind of underrated here is you look at Amari Campbell, who I think has had a pretty strong season thus far, all things considered. I mean, he's had some moments, but he's still learning this defense. With Campbell having been a summer enrollee, I know we've mentioned on here before some of the parallels to him and Jalen Kimber, where like when Kimber got here from Florida, having to kind of relearn a lot of just bad tendencies, habits, things of that nature. That were learned from bad defensive coaching in Florida. I think Campbell was in a similar boat coming from bad defensive coaching in North Carolina. Sure. There's probably still going to be some growing pains there for Amari Campbell. And he is now thrust as your solidified, bona fide top guy at linebacker. I mean, I love Dom DeLuca. Dom DeLuca is going to go down in Penn State lore. The walk-on local kid who won a state championship with 2 torn ACLs or whatever it was. And I feel like the story just gets more elaborate every time it's told. I mean, he single-handedly in some ways took over the second quarter of that SMU game last year. And DeLuca is a physical player. He's a smart player. He's got a very high football IQ, but he's very limited athletically. And that's where it's going to hurt. And, you mentioned Alex Tash. You mentioned Cam Smith. I feel like Tash was probably on his way to potentially burning the red shirt anyway due to special teams. Cam Smith has been with the travel squad all year long in practice. Another guy that I think could really go a long way here is if the light goes on for Keon Wiley through this. I mean, you go back to when Keon Wiley was in high school, and it was that class with Nittany White and guys of that nature who were rated higher. And anyone in Philadelphia would tell you Keon Wiley was the best high school football player in Philadelphia that year. And we've seen glimpses of it. He still seems like a guy who maybe doesn't completely trust his knee post surgery yet from a few years ago. So he's another one where the opportunity is going to be there. And, if you're Penn State, obviously you don't want to have to do this. You don't have to go through this, but at least you've got UCLA and Northwestern these next 2 weeks, two opponents that, in theory, you should dispatch of pretty easily. And there should be a lot of opportunity out there for Keon Wiley, for an Alex Tash, Cam Smith, maybe even Dakari Nelson to get some run at linebacker and see who emerges. Who emerges is that number 3 guy behind Campbell and DeLuca moving forward. I will be curious to see what Jim Knowles does. Do you maybe look, and this is just me completely spitballing, in no way, shape, or form have I heard anyone mention this, do you maybe look to play King Mack as almost like a box safety, extra linebacker towards the line of scrimmage, some on run down?
We saw Ohio State run similar looks last year.
That's part of where I got the idea from. Yeah. Like we saw Ohio State do it. King Mack at, 5'10" at best, but he's a physical dude. He's a strong guy. He's very athletic. Do you maybe see him take a role like that while you have Wheatley and Belgrave Shorter or whoever may be on the field at the safety spots? I don't know what they're going to do. Like you said, if you're going to have to try and figure out something like this on the fly, you can't ask for a much better defensive coordinator than Jim Knowles to try and do it. But yeah, this really throws a wrench into things for Penn State, and the fact you're coming off that loss against Oregon makes it so much worse because, like you said, you have almost no room for error. If you can't, they can't afford more than one more loss the rest of the way. I know you said they can only lose to Ohio State. I think if they go to Columbus and beat the Buckeyes and get tripped up elsewhere, they're still going to get in.
Yeah. If they beat Ohio State, then they're going to be fine. But they can't lose to Ohio State and lose beyond Ohio State.
Yeah.
They have to go perfect outside of Ohio State. And I mean, if they beat Ohio State, obviously great for them, and it definitely gives the season a sense of new life. But we can talk another day about the narratives of that point. But I think the overall point here, we both agree, is that the wiggle room for Penn State now is very low, and I think they'll be fine. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but the fact that you have little wiggle room to use with 8 games remaining in your schedule is a little scary. Now, the good news for them is that historically over the last 3-4 seasons, they have taken care of business against inferior opponents. I mean, they rarely lose against inferior opponents over the last 5-6 years, and over the last 3-4, they've been dominant, which should give Penn State fans, some sense of comfort. But that being said, looking at what this offense has done for the first 4 weeks of the season, I can understand not having a great sense of comfort either. Not to go off point from the linebacker issue here now, but just in general on that. So, I mean, definitely loss of wiggle room. Not exactly a cakewalk of a schedule remaining. They do have, tough games against Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana remaining. Those 3 all in a row with a bye week in between Iowa and Ohio State. Nebraska at the end of the season on November 22nd could be tough. And, that mid-November matchup in East Lansing against Michigan State, I don't think the Spartans are necessarily great this season or anything more than maybe a 6-6, maybe 7-5 team. But we know Penn State's history in East Lansing.
Weird things happen in East Lansing.
It's middle of November in East Lansing. That's a game that can ease. That's a trap. That's trap game written all over it. So, I mean, it's not exactly an easy rest of the season for Penn State to have no wiggle room with, which is definitely, for a lot of fans, a scary proposition.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, it comes down to on that point, and then we'll get ahead to actually previewing this weekend's game. But it's, you reap what you sow, right? If you just would have taken care of business against Oregon,
Yeah.
and even with how poorly you played for 50 minutes on offense, you had every opportunity. The game was there for the taking. You had a lead in double overtime. The play call and the decision by Drew and the interception were awful. You got a bad bounce when Oregon fumbled the ball on their possession in the first overtime, where if that ball bounces towards the line of scrimmage instead of right back at the Oregon running back, you probably fall on it and win the game. But
Yeah.
this is where you're at as a program, and if you just finish that one off again, you have that wiggle room, you feel much better. But at this point, you can't afford more than one more loss. And again, like you said, Ohio State's what everyone's going to point at. But going to Kinnick Stadium, we've seen Penn State say, I remember the 2008 season vividly being ruined by a trip to Kinnick Stadium. Indiana is not going to be a pushover. But this is the position you put yourself in. And one more thing with the linebackers real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what really frustrates you, concerns you, whatever, if you're Penn State fan, is coming out of that Oregon game, for all the negatives, the one positive was this defense, proved they're one of the best in the country, because they kept that Oregon offense bottled up the entire game. So you felt like if you were going to have any shot at winning in Columbus, if you get to the playoff and you're going to have a shot at beating one of those top tier teams in the postseason, it was because the defense stood on their head for 60 minutes and you got a master class performance from Jim Knowles. And that just became much more difficult to do without Tony Rojas.
Yeah. And we will talk about the UCLA game here in a minute. And I was about to pose a question. I'm going to be honest, I forgot the question now. Give me a second, see if I can recall it. It was going to be about the team in general coming out of this Oregon game. I guess first, because I think it's important to talk about as we preview this game, but going forward, is it seems like the approach this week by a lot of Penn State players and the coaching staff here is, kind of the pressure's off type approach now. In a way, the pressure's off. I mean, nobody locally believes in them.
No, I would say, anything, the pressure's worse now than it's been maybe since going into that Minnesota game in 2016. Like I think the pressure on James Franklin and that team now is literally the highest it's been since before they won on that magical run in 16 and won the Big Ten and probably saved Franklin's job. I really do think that.
Well, and I guess it depends how you look at it, right? You can look at it that way. You can look at it in the sense that nobody within the town at this point, or the town, I mean, the Penn State fan base in general, believes that they are going to, be able to do what they set out to do this season. So it's kind of like Ohio State last year after, I know only 4 games after that, but when Ohio State lost to Michigan last year, coming out of that game, nobody thought Ohio State was going to make a run for a national championship. Ohio State wasn't tough enough. Ohio State wasn't this. Ohio State wasn't that. I'm not comparing Penn State to Ohio State, but the pressure kind of came off Ohio State at that point. And there was conversations about, Ryan Day, is his job on the line because he's lost to Michigan 3 straight times. It seems like, Penn State now is, taking not taking the idea, but, they definitely hear the outside noise now from the fan base about what they are or they are not. James Franklin has heard it. I mean, he made it kind of clear today when he said that it's a good time to get out of town and get on this road trip. And perhaps this road trip is what Penn State needs. Penn State can go out to California this weekend. They've obviously been thinking long and hard about what this past weekend was and was not. And this is a chance for them to, kind of start anew. I mean, this is the start of, season number 2 for them, you could say. The first 4 games was season 1, but now with the lack of wiggle room, this is a whole new season. Start over. At this point, you need to go 8-1. 8-0, 7-1 at worst to have a chance to make the playoffs. Does that mean I'm expecting the offense to come out this Saturday and look tremendous? No, they may do so anyway because it's UCLA. So on that end, can't really take anything away from it. But I think this loss maybe offers them a chance to kind of, just not refocus isn't the right word, but I do think it seems like they're using it as not a lesson learned or a building block, but they seem to be taking this loss a little bit differently than they've taken losses in the past. I know like Zaki Willie on Saturday night was talking about, their goals are all there, and the playoffs are still there and for them and stuff like that. But it does seem that they're taking this loss a little differently than they did in the past. And just to build off top of that, I think at this point, if you're James Franklin, considering the importance of the season and what the season means for the program going forward, I think everybody on the offensive side of the ball, coaching staff wise, should be coaching for their job the remainder of the season. I think the defensive side of the staff, you have to feel good about if you're still a Penn State fan. Terry Smith, one of the best quarterback coaches in the country. Poindexter is great. Dan Connor has been very good at a linebacker so far. Deion Barnes has been very good on the defensive line. But the offensive side of the ball has been a complete cluster. These first 4 games. The quarterbacks have not developed over the last 2 years, it seems, under Danny O'Brien. The wide receivers, I don't even know how to describe them under Marcus Higgins. Still, I would say a disappointment this season considering everything. Hal is fine at tight end. He's safe. But, the big one is Phil Trautwein right now. What is going on with this offensive line? This is supposed to be one of the best offensive lines in the country. And, this reminds me of the offensive line the first 2 years he was here in Happy Valley. It was a very poor offensive line. Phil Leonard came in, helped assist the offensive line. The offensive line took a big step up those years. Phil Leonard leaves, and now the offensive line regresses massively. I don't think Trautwein's job should be safe, depending on how the offensive line plays the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that's valid. The offense is it's been a complete disaster this year. And like you said, they may come out Saturday and look great. UCLA is terrible. They're just absolutely terrible. We'll get into here momentarily. But again, until I go back to the 2023 season. I've made this comparison between these teams a lot. You were putting up 45 on Northwestern, 63 on UMass, and 63 on Delaware, but it was a slog to do it. You didn't do it comfortably. And then when you played any sort of team with a pulse, whether it was Michigan, whether it was Ohio State, Ole Miss in the bowl game, you couldn't do anything. And this feels a lot like that. So, yeah, we'll see what Saturday holds. But yeah, this is the Whiteout Report preview show.
We should probably talk about the actual game.
23 minutes in, we probably should preview Penn State and UCLA this Saturday. So as always, Wednesday nights, we're here on YouTube via Proline TV. Coming to you free. Our post-game show this past Saturday was free as well. So, if you enjoy our content, if you're someone who's been with Dylan and I since, you and I have been together since the Black Shoe Diary days to the Happy Valley Insider days, now to here, if you're someone who's followed us along all that time, we appreciate you. We thank you. Don't be afraid. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe.
Drop comments.
Give us that super chat. Give us that super thanks, right? Please do your part as a fan base to help keep our show free on Wednesdays and Saturdays. But so let's look ahead to Saturday afternoon. I know I mentioned this briefly on the recap show Saturday night. As someone who has, grown up in Big Ten countries, lived in Big Ten country my entire life, the Rose Bowl will always be a special place. I don't care if it's the Rose Bowl game. I don't care if it's UCLA at 3:30 on a Saturday afternoon in October. There will always be something special about the Rose Bowl. So it's going to be cool to see Penn State there on Saturday again. This is one that there's no reason for this game to be competitive. UCLA comes into this game ranked 131st nationally in scoring offense, 119th in scoring defense. Just look at the scores of their games: 43-10 against Utah, 30-23 against UNLV, 35-10 at home against New Mexico, and then they only scored 14 against the terrible Northwestern team last week, who we'll get to see next week. They brought in Nico Iamaleava in the offseason. That is not – I'm not going to say Nico hasn't worked out because I don't know how much you can really put on him with what's around him. Nico's completing 65% of his passes, 788 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 INTs. He's also the team's leading rusher, which I'm very confident in saying was not their plan coming into the year. But again, Deshaun Foster has been fired for a reason. Offensive coordinator Tino Sanseri, mutual parting of the ways on Tuesday night. Again, if you look at Nico, his yards per attempt is down from almost 8 yards an attempt last year, Tennessee, to under 6.5. His air yards per attempt, which was over 8 yards per attempt last year, Tennessee down under 6 yards. So again, I don't know how much you can really throw at his feet. This is a game that if you're Penn State, this is the get right game you want. UCLA, I don't think they're going to win a game this year. I think they're going to go 0-12.
Is it the worst power? Are they the worst Power 4 team in college football?
I think they are. Yeah, far. I think they're one of the worst Power 4 teams in quite a few years. Quite honestly,
are they a bottom 10 team in college football?
I mean, when you throw in the quit factor that has to be there at this point, I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, even who knows until they snap the ball and start if UCLA. They've only played 4 games. You can still preserve that red shirt. You can look at who knows who's even going to be on the field for the Bruins come Saturday. In all honesty,
Yeah.
So I think when you factor in that there has to be a huge quit factor there. I don't think that's impossible. Like I'm not convinced if you drop this team in the American right now, they're going to go 500 in conference play. So this is one Penn State. They need to come out. They need to take you by the throat, and you need to see it offensively. And I understand they could score 70 on Saturday with one explosive play after another, and people aren't going to believe in the offense. And I get that. That doesn't change the fact that that's what you need to see from this team, though, on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day for Penn State, honestly, the points don't matter, the yards don't matter. The only thing that matters really for Penn State going forward offensively over these next UCLA, Northwestern, Iowa. What do you want to see against UCLA, Northwestern? Let me turn the Dodgers game off so it stops changing my face. What do you want to see is Drew play at the best he's ever played, and you want to see the offensive line actually block somebody and open up holes on the ground for more than just Katron Allen. There has been holes there at times for Nicholas Singleton, but the offensive line play has been, considering the level of opponents they have faced the first 3 weeks and then last week against Oregon, it's been borderline disaster, for being honest, especially considering the expectations. I mean, this was an offensive line room that was talking about wanting to be a Joe Moore Award winning offensive line, and it's not even a top 10 offensive line right now in the Big Ten. So a lot of concern there about the offensive line. But yeah, the offensive line has to be dominant. Drew needs to go out there and complete 23 of 30 passes for 220 yards and however many touchdowns comes with that. Like, I don't care about the total yards marks, but he needs to go out there and show that he can make throws to all levels of the field consistently if Penn State's actually going to have a chance to do anything this season. Because if he doesn't, none of this matters, and none of the games are worth previewing going forward, because they'll lose to Ohio State. They may lose to Indiana, and if they make the playoffs, it won't matter because he can't be consistent enough to do so. At this point, while I don't think the offensive play calling has been great this season, and while the offensive line hasn't been great this season, a lot of this all comes back to Drew and that he's just not been playing at a good enough level for the last 7 games dating back to last season.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue he played well against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game for the most part. His first interception, I did not put on him.
So 3 playoff games and 4 games this year, 7.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they have played 4 games, huh? My bad. Yeah. But yeah. I mean, he just it's maddening, and like you said, you don't necessarily need to see the big gaudy numbers from Drew Aller on Saturday. You know what I want to see from Drew Aller? I want to see him anticipate throws. I want to see him set his feet. I want to see his mechanics. I want to see him look confident. I want to see him go through his progressions and use the entire field. Things we have not seen from him. There were plays to be made against Oregon that he did not. It's more than there was. I can think of two distinct throws to Luke Reynolds that were there for big gains. One of which is right before the half that probably gets him at least a field goal in a league going in the locker room. And both of them, instead of putting it in front of Reynolds and giving him a chance to catch it and run, he put it behind him. That's what I want to see from Drew Aller on Saturday.
Feldman had a great article today about this quarterback class that's going to come out for the draft next year. Now, you look across the board, all the quarterback play for those guys who are expected to be top picks this year has been mediocre at best. Nussmeier, Klubnik, Drew.
Sellers hasn't been good.
Sellers have all been. It's the guys.
Arch Manning makes Drew Aller look like Peyton Manning.
It's the guys under them like a John Mateer, like a Dante Moore that have been impressive. But I forget if it was an assistant coach in the Big Ten or a scout, but one of them said that you look at Drew, he has all the physical, and not verbatim here, paraphrasing, he has all the physical tools. He can do this and that, but he's just not while he has all the tools, he's just not a very good quarterback. He doesn't do the things that a good quarterback should do well. And you just mentioned a lot of those things that he does not do well. And I mean, yeah, at this point, he's 4 years into the program. I know he only started playing quarterback as a high school freshman, but he's 4 years into a college program. Why has he not continued to develop as a quarterback?
Yeah, and you can blame coaching, you can put it on him. You mentioned he has the physical tools. But he doesn't play quarterback well. I made this comparison in another group chat you and I both in during the game on Saturday. It painfully reminds me of watching Anthony Morelli. And for those of you who, maybe you're new to the Penn State scene or whatever it is, or you're not a lifelong Penn State fan, Anthony Morelli was 5-star #1 quarterback in the country. Late, it was recruitment wise was different because he was a late flip from Pitt to Penn State, and he took over from Michael Robinson in 2006 when Penn State, very similar to Drew taking over for Sean Clifford when Penn State's coming off a great season, and you're thinking, hey, he's going to take us to the next level, and the tools were always there, and the ability to play quarterback just never was, and it reminds me so much of that. I mean, now Drew's been much better than Morelli was, but still, it reminds me of that. And like we said, that's what you want to see Saturday from him. I don't care if he throws for 200 yards. I want to see him anticipate throws, lead his receivers, go through his progressions, use the entire field, clean up his mechanics. Those are the things that are killing him right now, and those are the things that are going to limit him and hold this team back. The offensive line needs to be better. Nick Singleton, I don't know what the hell's going on with him. You got to get that figured out as well if you're going to get to where you want to get to this season. Because as great as Katron Allen's been, Nick Singleton's your home run hitter. So you've got to get that figured out too. But yeah, it's just maddening to where this team brought. I mean, especially on offense, the only thing other than Tyler Warren and the tight ends haven't been the problem. Other than Tyler Warren, all you lost off the offense were the receivers, and you anticipated this to be an upgrade with what you had in the portal. And I still think that the receivers are better than what they had in the past.
They're better.
So there's no reason this offense should be struggling like this.
And I don't want this to turn to what some may perceive as a Drew hate fest, because I am a Drew fan. Anybody who's followed my work knows that I'm a fan of Drew. But when it's these consistent struggles in certain areas, you do have to wonder, is it the quarterback that is, the common denominator? Some people may say it's, James Franklin's the common denominator, and that's fair too. But I mean, we've seen multiple seasons now of wide receivers struggling with Drew, and part of it, I think, is system. Part of it's Drew, part of it's blocking. It's not just one piece, but it's the struggles have been to a point, and I mean, struggles is very also, objective here. Penn State offensive struggles are very different than a bad team's offensive struggles. Penn State's still putting up decent offensive numbers, just not doing it in a fashion that is going to win them games against quality opponents. And that was the case last year as well. But when it's this consistent year over year, different wide receivers, whatever it may be, you have to start answering these questions. But I think we should shift back to UCLA.
Yes.
Obviously, we want to see Drew take a step forward in his game. We want to see the offensive line take a step forward. Going back to the UCLA offense, I mean, this is an offense that's pretty 50-50 in how they call plays. 31 pass attempts per game, 27 rushing attempts per game. And actually not a bad team on the ground, averaging 4.6 yards per carry, averaging 124 yards per game. They're averaging 5.5 yards per game on offense, which is kind of amazing that they're putting up decent per play averages, but they're only averaging 14.2 points per game, which, that is quite amazing. We said Nico's been very solid, all things considered, this year. Problem is there's no talent around him. At running back, Anthony Woods, Javion Thomas have been good when they received carries, but haven't received a whole ton of carries, just 47 combined in 4 games. But at wide receiver, they have nobody. I mean, Quasi Gilmer is their leading receiver with 19 receptions for 225 yards and a touchdown. He had 3 for 51 last week against Northwestern, had 3 for 31 against Utah to start the season. Just not enough talent around Nico this season to take advantage of his skill set. So, I mean, I think there's pieces there, but there's not enough pieces there for them to be a successful offense. And, at the end of the day, 14.2 points per game, not going to get it done. So, like we said, for Penn State, now having to find kind of a what now at linebacker on the defense side of the ball, this is a good first opponent for them.
Yeah, definitely. You look at the Penn State defense, they should have a pretty dominant performance on Saturday. I mean, now that said, no one's going to be surprised if you look up and there's 5 minutes left in the first quarter and it's like 7-3 UCLA or something weird, because this thing's got slow start written all over it for a million different reasons. But yeah, I think with Penn State, you mentioned the UCLA offense, and this is an offense that even if Nico comes out and plays well, they should still be able to dominate, because again, there's not a lot around him. You don't know who's going to be calling plays on Saturday. And similar with the UCLA defense, right? I mean, after they fired their defensive coordinator 3 games in after giving up 43, 30, and 35, again, at home to New Mexico. Interim head coach Tim Skipper, from what I've read, I think is calling the defense. They called it a collaborative effort, but I believe he's the one calling the defensive plays. And they were much better last week, but it was against Northwestern, and it was at that rinky-dink stadium on the lake. So there's probably 900-mile-an-hour winds. No one could move the ball. I don't know. I'd be lying if I told you I watched a second of that game.
I don't know why anybody would.
Yeah, even if I was a Northwestern UCLA fan, I'm sure there would have been a better game on. But, yeah, so even if you look at the defense for UCLA, again, this is one that Penn State should find their way against and hopefully get some footing under them, get some things right. Just all in all, it's not a good UCLA team. I don't want to keep piling on them. I think Deshaun Foster, I will say with Deshaun Foster, I was truly surprised to see it go this south this year, because I thought last year after a poor start, that team rallied and they played really, really hard for him. And they seemed to really, really embrace Foster and that coaching staff. I don't know. I don't want to speculate this, but I mean, who knows with Nico coming in and just the dog and pony show that follows there, who knows? But I was surprised to see it go so south for the Bruins in such a hurry this year. We didn't think Deshaun Foster was ever going to be a great coach, but I thought they showed last year, hey, his players like him. They're going to play hard for him. They're going to fight for him. You're back to the drawing board if you're UCLA, but yeah, no, good.
I thought they were going to be a 3-win team-ish this year, but I mean, there's a big difference between a 3-win team and being whatever they are this season, because this is like we said, one of the worst teams in all of college football. They've just been
Like,
I mean, terrible is not even the right word.
I'm
And,
looking.
I mean,
I just real quick looking at their schedule. They go to East Lansing next week, but that's a noon kick, so that's a 9 a.m. bio time kick for them. And it's like if you don't win that one, man, you get Maryland, who's been better than expected, Indiana, Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, and UCLA or USC. Like if they don't win that one next week, I don't see where they get a win this year.
yeah, and it's interesting too because I mean, obviously the offensive struggles are a big one, but you look across the stats from these games, and I mean they have had clunkers on both sides of the ball, but their average stats don't really tell you like making it seem like this would be a team this bad. But what I've noticed with them looking at their game breakdowns is that each week it's almost been a little bit of a different issue for them. Sometimes the offense has been mostly terrible. They've scored 10, 23, 10, and 14. But like against UNLV, they had over 400 yards of offense, but the defense let them down that day. Against New Mexico, the defense allowed almost 500 yards of total offense to New Mexico. So it's been something new every week. And at the end of the day, they're just not a very good team, very talented team.
No.
They're not coached well.
Well, I think too with the defense, if you want to see the true telling stats on this defense through 4 games, which, again, includes 2 group of 5 opponents, including New Mexico, again, they have 4 sacks.
Yeah.
No interceptions and 1 forced fumble.
Yeah.
That's unfathomable. That's unfathomable through 4 games for a Big Ten team to have 4 sacks, no interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. That's honestly, I didn't expect it to be anywhere near that bad when I looked. I'm just like flabbergasted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other amazing thing is you're talking about turnovers and sacks. Going back to the offense, they haven't turned the ball over a ton.
Oh.
They only have like 4 turnovers, and they haven't given up many sacks. They've only given up like 6 sacks.
Nico's only been sacked 9 times this year.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just it's not like they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're just not very good. They just can't move the ball consistently.
Yeah, they can't. So we'll get ready to put a cap on this one. We will let's look ahead to Saturday. We'll give our predictions. As always, our offensive MVP will predict our defensive MVP. We'll predict our score. Dylan, I will leave it up to you if you want to go first or if you'd like me to.
Offensive MVP, I don't know where to I don't know. I don't want to go with Cage on. That's the lazy guess. Trevor Pena. Let's go with Trevor Pena.
Offensive MVP. I'm going to go collective unit. I'm going to say the offensive line gets it together this week, and they come out and they push this porous UCLA front 7 around, and we finally see them come out and maul people the way we've been waiting to see all year. I'll say the offensive line as a group is my offensive MVP for Saturday.
Defensively, give me Dom DeLuca. I mean, somebody's gonna have to step up in that linebacker room, right? So I have to go with Mr. Steady Eddie in the middle there. He's gonna have to, he's the first man up there with no Rojas now. So give me Dom to have a big Dom DeLuca game, which means could see a pick 6 here. He has a knack for those big interceptions.
He does. I like that one. That was going to be mine. So knowing with Nico, they're going to want us to throw the ball around a little bit. I'll say AJ Harris. I thought for last week was the first time all year he really was tested in any fashion. Thought he played well. Thought he really played well in run support. I think that tape from last Saturday is one that's going to make AJ Harris a lot of money come April. So I'll say, anticipating Nico to want to throw the ball around, I'll say AJ Harris has a big game, maybe a pass breakup or 2, maybe his first interception of the season. And I'll say that Harris will take home defensive MVP for Penn State on Saturday.
I like it. I think we both have Penn State winning this game, right?
Yes, I would hope
so. Probably a lot to a little.
Yes.
I think that's all I got here on this one. I mean, I know we didn't talk much about the actual game here tonight, but I mean, at the end of the day, this is a game that really shouldn't be a game if Penn State shows up and does what it needs to do. And even if they don't they should win this game by multiple scores. But if Penn State's offense doesn't find success this week against UCLA, then the level of concerns going forward is going to be quite a bit higher.
Yeah, especially if Missouri's offense continues to hum along. But I digress. Anyway, that will do it for us tonight at the Whiteout Report preview show, previewing Penn State's trip to the Rose Bowl to battle UCLA on Saturday. For Dylan, I am Marty. Make sure you join us Saturday evening after the Nittany Lions and Bruins wrap up. We will talk to you then. And hopefully it'll be a much more joyous post-game show than last Saturday's gut-wrenching, throat-punching, just tear my guts out kind of loss.